So we talked about one topic that is like so important for coaches, right? If you are a coach and you don't have a process for your first coaching call with a client. So I'm not talking about the like, hey, should we have a call conversation? I'm talking about the strategy call or the discovery call or the intro call, whatever you want to call it. If you don't have a process for that, you're probably not converting as many people into clients that could really benefit from what you do, right? So what we talked about, we presented a whole framework on how to do that call. And this is from like thousands of sessions of experience with multiple coaches have analyzed what we've been doing in sales calls, and we've brainstormed within our community and gotten tons and tons of feedback and data to figure out what are the patterns of these sales calls and how does each of us do it and what's working and what doesn't work. And we figured out how to demonstrate how to display that simply in a framework. So if you haven't seen that, definitely get the masterclass and watch it and understand. What we're going to talk about today is the things that people learned in our session on this framework. And maybe we should, Faisal, really briefly talk about the framework and the different steps. So there's the first step, which is connecting with your clients in the session. So within the session that you're doing, the discovery session, you have to connect and build rapport first. Then you need to explore and clarify a lot of the things that in the short term matter to them. Like, what are their goals and desires right now? What are their challenges and obstacles right now? What do they care about feeling? Like, what makes them happy and unhappy? All those things we want to cover and not coach on them. We want to clarify and help them understand those things. So you both understand them, actually.
Yeah,
and then
not solve for it, but clarify. But we are coaching.
Yeah, coaching. Yeah, so coach. When I say coaching in this context of a discovery session, not doing the solving problems with them together coaching. I'm talking about the clarifying coaching, right? So if I say you're not coaching, what I mean is you're not solving it. You got to hold back the solving slash like coaching, and in favor of the clarity coaching. That's like the most important part of the second step here. When you're exploring goals or challenges or emotions, get them really clear, but don't solve the things that come up yet. After that, step 3 is really think about the longer term vision for their life, the greater context for their life, what really ultimately matters to them. And then you can start coaching on the things that that are going to be important for them to have an experience of coaching with you and to move something forward. That's step 3. Actually do your coaching. Bring your magic, bring your tools, help them make progress. And obviously from there, you can ask them, do you want to continue doing this outside of the session? And then you can make your offer. So that's step 4, which is making the offer. So there's lots of things that go into that. Obviously, we're oversimplifying it here. We only have a certain amount of time in the podcast, but watch the masterclass. There's so many good things in there on each of these steps.
Yeah, it's like power packed with 2 hours, and not only the framework that we shared, where we've gotten perspective from other coaches, what they've tried, what they learned in the process. And we're going to talk about that shortly, but there's a lot in there, even within each of the sections that we cover in detail. So we didn't go at the end of it. It's like, you need another session to describe the delivery session. No. That's like all the pieces. The only piece that we couldn't go into was the offer piece, which we talked about the transition of it. The reason we couldn't go into the offer is because we literally did not have any more time left at the end of it. But exactly how you'd structure your call, how you'd support them in every section, this level of detail, you will find it in paid programs, but you're getting it. So if you're listening to it on the podcast, on the live Facebook group, just type #delivery. And if you're listening to this on the podcast, just reach out to us on any of the channel. I'll put it in the comments, whether it's YouTube or podcast, wherever it is. We're usually on Facebook and Instagram are the main channels, or you can email us. You will find the contacts below, and we'll be happy to share that with you.
Yeah, awesome. So let's talk about Faisal, about some of the things that coaches learned on that masterclass, because these are going to be really powerful for people on the podcast. Let's talk about some of the things that stand out. Why don't you start us off, Faisal? What did you hear from coaches that was like their personal mind-blowing insights or ahas that they had?
I think the top one was that I need a framework. It's like a lot of coaches get into these sessions and they might not have and they lose confidence in their process because they don't actually have a process. They might have a loose process based on the certification they went through. And but a lot of the times coaches get lost in the conversation, and it's hard for them to kind of follow a process to get clients to an outcome towards a result. And the whole point of the framework is to help clients get to an insight, an action, realization, a decision that they will make, or these insights that they would have that they wouldn't otherwise have. Now, you could do it without a framework, but it will be all over the place. And I remember the beginning stages of my own coaching career where I would just I would get lost in the conversation. I would get to the end and I would feel rushed. I'm like, there's no way I can offer anything at the end of this because it's still continuing. And on top of that, I didn't know what to do on the next call. And on top, or I would just continue the call. I've done 3, 4, 5. I think I've done up to 4-hour calls, and by the end of it, it's I'm exhausted and the client is exhausted and we don't know what to do out of that. And I didn't even know how to approach it. But it didn't even need to happen at 4-hour range. You could do it in 60 minutes, 90 minutes, in 2 hours if you had a clear framework to do this. And at the end, the client himself or herself will tell you whether or not they want more of that coaching process. So the biggest one that I saw was that, yeah, we need to have a framework. And there are a few other ones in there, but that was one of the biggest ones that almost every coach in there is like, hey, we actually realize that I need to follow these steps, and we give timelines for each of these steps as well.
Yeah, and I think that if you're listening to this podcast right now, the question you could ask yourself is, do I have a clear process that I follow for my discovery calls? It's basically, do I have that clear process? And when you do have it, am I being the leader of these calls? Are you you need to lead the client. This is another insight people had, is you're leading. You can't just wander around and hope that it is an effective session for what the client needs. Because this is one of your first coaching experiences with them. You want to help them understand their own life. And you need to understand it too. So you know where to coach. So you know how to make sure that the program is actually a fit for them, is relevant, all those things. And so having a process for this and leading them through that process and having them feel that you're leading them through the process is a big part of that.
Yes. And a lot of the insights were in the specific categories. For example, in the first category around connection, one of the things that we shared was creating a positive frame, but more importantly, connecting with them at a level whether you do it through story or otherwise. We do recommend sharing some kind of story that connects you with the client, a vulnerable story. That was an important realization for many of the coaches, because that story, and many of the coaches actually did do it. So they shared in the masterclass that they actually shared their story, and they share why they're doing this thing. A lot of ways. And we even talked about how you can share bits and pieces of stories that are relevant to the client or relevant to that specific discussion. And the challenge is that a lot of coaches who come out of certifications, as a baseline, they're taught, don't make this about you. And that's not what we're saying. Yes, don't make this about you. The story needs to connect directly to the client, whether you're communicating why you're doing this or how do they feel connected with you? Because if they don't trust you and they don't have a connection with you, it's hard for clients to open up. It's hard for them to be vulnerable. It's hard for you to actually challenge them. You will hear a lot of things like, I don't know, when you ask them, or you will feel resistance when you're pushing them and challenging them in different areas. So that was a big realization, that I need to consider a story or a better way of connecting with my clients so the rest of the session goes well.
And actually, the other thing that came out of that too, in that discussion, people were commenting on, was stories are not about you. They're actually, so like the top rule in coaching is, it's not about you, it's about the client. Yes, the story about you is actually about your client. It's about making them feel connected. It's about helping them understand that this is a safe space for them to share more too. You're doing this for their best interest. You're not sharing it because it's about you. You're sharing something about yourself because it's good for the client in this context. And then the second part of that is, there are places in your session where your own stories will be relevant and beneficial to the client. That's always what I say, is is this story beneficial, or am I just saying because I want to talk about myself? It's no, you'll get a feel for which stories are relevant when with your client, and you'll bring them up. And the way to know whether that's actually beneficial is, when your story is done, is this client going to take away something that's relevant to what you're talking about? Right? And are you going to be able to clearly connect it to the topic of the conversation, where you're at? And so this happens at the beginning, in the sense that they're trying to get to know you. So you're connecting them to you with your origin story and maybe your why about coaching. But later on in the session, there's other little things that are going to come up. So there's ways for them to get to know you. That way they're going to feel like, oh, you're sharing, I can share too. And then they're going to be able to share things that are actually relevant to their journey. So they can get clarity, you can get clarity, and then they can make a better decision going forward about whether you're somebody they want to work with. Right.
Yeah.
So it's a win-win for it's a win for them, even though you're sharing about yourself.
Yeah, and there's so much in there. So we've had actually multiple conversations around how you structure your story within our community. We've had trainings on this because that one little part of that first section is so important. And that, by the way, your story, if you're a coach, your story defines how you connect with your clients, whether you share it on a podcast, on your coaching sessions, on your posts. If you and there's a term for it, the expert story positioning, or and there are other terms for it too. If you don't know how to communicate that, it's very hard for you to connect with clients. And most coaches, they struggle to share that in a way that is coherent. So that's part of our community. That's one of the things that we consistently discuss is how do we connect with clients with what matters to us? Because usually, as Simon Sinek would say, people don't buy your service or product, they buy your why. It's like, why are you doing this thing? Why is this so important for you? Because they need to understand that there's something beyond what you're offering that is important to your heart or to your brand, whatever that might be. But there's a lot in there.
I would go a little farther. I'd say they're not buying your why only, because they're actually buying the thing that they want, the results that they're seeking in their life. But they will be more able to make that buying decision if they bought your why already. If they've already personally bought it internally, right? They're not actually buying the reason that you do coaching. They're buying their stuff that you're going to help them achieve with the coaching, right? But without understanding your why, it's harder for them to buy. Like, how do I know that I can trust you to actually show up for me? Because, like, I mean, I've had questions at the beginning. It's what's the program going to be like? I'm like, it's going to be exactly like what we just did, but just long term and better. And then the first couple of sessions, the person came in with me and was like, I was really worried about this, being there's just a whole bunch of money and really like a bait and switch. And I can see that it was totally worth it in the first couple of sessions. And the reason is part of the reason for that is when I share my story, they understand that I'm in this with them for the long term. I'm not going to disappear because I care so much about this, care so much about them and their situation because I've been through an experience that made me care about this. And they could feel my passion feeling that, right? And so that makes them more comfortable to make that decision, right? And even then, they still have their own worries about that process, right?
Yeah.
People are
I mean,
afraid that
that's human.